which is captured in an article on the economy, which is to be implemented together with many legislative measures, and which they came up with a concept called Biashara Mashinani. One of those things they intend to do, or they recommend to you, is increase the county shareable revenue from 15%, the minimum, to 35%. They recommend the creation of a ward fund where 5% of all county revenue will be paid into. The fund will require public participation in project identification and implementation. They recommend a statute known as the Prompt Payment Bill for the payment of invoices for the supply of services and goods to government, where invoices should be paid within a period of 60 days and a tribunal to resolve any disputes as regards outstanding payments. They recommend a one-stop shop, incubation shops and centers all over the country, beginning initially with the counties and going to the wards, where everybody who has a micro-enterprise, a member of the youth, women, will be able to obtain contracts under AGPO, capital under Youth Enterprise Fund and the Women Fund, counseling in the form of information and support, and prosperity for all small businesses. For the youth who leave colleges, and even for those in universities, they recommend a 4-year moratorium once you leave college on higher education loans board loans. They recommend, again for the youth and for some of the older ones as well, state responsibility for infrastructure that supports the digital economy so that we can sell farm produce and cottage industries right from our villages digitally. They recommend for county that the resources be allocated on their progress in eradicating wastage and corruption and attaining Article 43 rights. These are your rights to health, your rights to housing, your rights to food security, education, and social security. The more you use money, the more money you get. They recommend that the president once a year, during the State of the Nation address, indicates to the country what steps the nation has taken to implement the rights on health, housing, food, education, and social security. The steering committee recommends the simplification of tax laws and broadening the tax base so that taxation policy encourages rather than suppresses business. They encourage closer commitment to our East African community and project and trading partners, which they see as integral to our prosperity. They recommend that among the governors, that if the governor is male, then he should or she should consider a member of the opposite sex for their running mate. They also recommend that deputy governors be given a specific portfolio so that they have a desk and work to do. In the interest of time, I move to the question of the war on corruption. They recommend that Parliament passes the laws that are effective for the expeditious hearing, disposal of trial of cases involving corruption. They recommend enhanced penalty for economic crimes and corruption offenses and introduce a duty to report any knowledge or suspicion of instances or acts of corruption. They recommend an offense to be introduced on the concealment of corruption. They recommend, as regards fraudulent land acquired, that the Supreme Court should clarify the law with certainty so that Kenyans can enjoy the security of their land rights. The steering committee recommends strengthening of the office of the DPP, which is to be elevated, if the proposal is passed, to an independent office under the Constitution. The steering committee recommends to you Kenyans that the Controller of Budget strictly enforces the Public Finance Management Act to ensure that no more than 35% of a national or county government's revenue is used on salaries, benefits, and allowances. They recommend reforming of the IBC, our electoral system, to ensure credible, free, and fair elections. As to the question of gender parity, there are many recommendations, but one of the most prominent ones is full gender parity in the Senate, 47 men and 47 women. In the interest of harmony, in the interest of inclusivity, they recommend the creation of the position of the leader of the official opposition, who is to hold the government of the day accountable. They recommend that the president shall now share power with the prime minister and 2 deputy prime ministers. They recommend that the office of cabinet secretary be renamed to cabinet minister, and that the president be able to appoint some of those from the National Assembly. They recommend some changes to the judiciary, including the introduction of the office of the Judiciary Ombudsman, who shall sit on the Judicial Service Commission, so that Kenyans have somewhere to take their complaints if they have any. The steering committee recommends the creation of a youth commission that will champion all youth issues in the country. The steering committee recommends the creation of a health commission under statute to look into questions of health professionals and to help harmonize standards of service in the counties and in the nation. There are many, many more provisions that you should read from the report. You have had to read for yourself. And the steering committee humbly submits their report and submits, in accordance with its mandate, that you can see reflected back at you your stories, your desires, your frustrations, which they have attempted to turn into instruments of change. Thank you very much for the privilege of your attention.